Good morning, indeed, grabbers. It's Tuesday, November the 21st. Got a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about the documents you need to do a Sub2 deal. We're going to talk about the new moratorium on VA foreclosures and the interest rates. Gosh, they're dropping again. So listen, we're going to be back in about 45 seconds. Grab a cup of coffee, share our link, invite your other investor friends over, and we'll get to it. Good morning, indeed, grabbers. Welcome to Goat Talk. Goat Talk is our almost weekly Facebook and YouTube live. We don't do it every week, but we do it most weeks. So we're glad to have you here. We know that there are 10,000 lives going on out there, probably right this minute, that you could be on. We appreciate you being here. Say good morning. Say something. Let me know who you are, where you are, who I'm talking to today. We're covering the topic of documents that you need to do your Sub2 deals. And that list is probably as different as there are people doing it. I can just share the list with you that I use and that I've used for the most part for the last 25 years. It has changed over the years as things have changed. But that's the list that we're going over this morning. Well, hey, Joyce, good to see you from Bryant, Arkansas. We saw Joyce a couple of weeks ago down at Randy's RIA. Had a great time down there. Did a meeting and a workshop. Had a fantastic crowd. Hey, Kevin, good to see you. Tyler, Texas. Good to see you from out there in Texas. So a couple of things we want to go over before we really get started today. Number one, if you're listening to this, we would love to have you subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you would, sub2tv.com. We, in addition to doing the lives just about every week, we also release a video just about every single day. So we'd love to have you do that. Share that link, if you will. Get all your other investor friends to come over and subscribe. We share a lot of information. Also, we do some of the most affordable coaching that I've ever seen anywhere. $7coaching.com will teach you creative finance. I'll answer your questions personally. We do a live coaching call every month, and we also answer questions every Friday. If you're on here because you're curious about creative finance, maybe you're a wholesaler right now, we would love to pay you for leads that you can't convert. You can go to our website at deadleadsplease.com. Get on our list. We'll communicate with you. We'll bug the heck out of you trying to find out if you've got any leads. But the great thing about it is if you have a lead that you can't convert that may be open to something creative, we'll pay you for that lead and we'll walk you through the process of how we convert it and close it. So not only can you get paid, but you can learn why you're getting paid. So check that out. Don't know if you guys heard about it, but here in the last few days, we had one of our students send us a link to it. He's a mortgage guy, Andrew. If you need a mortgage, you should be talking to him because he does those. But they have started a moratorium on VA foreclosures for the next 6 months into 2024. Don't know if any of you guys have noticed that or not. If you deal in foreclosures, that's important because there won't be any VA foreclosures for the next 6 months. Now, what I'm more curious about is somehow that going to carry over into regular foreclosures like we had a couple of years ago, because, a large part of our business is foreclosures. Now, if you're marketing to foreclosures, you should be careful. Some of you guys are in different states. We've got Juan here. He's also in Texas. Some of you guys will have foreclosure protection laws for people in foreclosure, where it's even against the law to market to those people. So you need to be aware of that. Fortunately, in Arkansas, we don't have that, so we don't have a problem with it. But I'd love to know your thoughts on it. And if you guys were investors a couple of years ago when we had the foreclosure moratorium, if you remember that, there were no foreclosures, and your marketing, if that was a key part of your marketing, you really had to shift on that. So there's something to think about anyway. And also, it appears that sometime in the last couple of days, supposedly rates have dropped on mortgages. And I don't know if you guys pay much attention to that, but every time there's a rate drop by the slightest margin, of course, they claim that there's going to be this big resurgence of buyers out in the marketplace. So I don't know. I just checked it about 10 minutes ago, and it looks to me like unless you have a 740 or better credit score, you're still paying 8% for a 30-year mortgage. And that doesn't sound super attractive to me. I don't know what you guys think about it. Let me know. We're doing a show on our own today. Jodi's out running some errands. Maybe she'll pop in here and have something to say shortly, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Remember, if you have questions during this, go ahead and ask them. Since I'm running everything today, I may not see it until we're moving on down the line, but we will get to your questions before the end of the show. So Matt said he believes there's going to be another rate hike in December. What do you base that on, Matt? I also agree that with you. I don't think they're going to stop. They may fluctuate a little bit, but I believe we're going to get to 10% before they actually stop and start on some kind of downward trajectory. I'm not sure. I'm not a fortune teller, but that's just what I believe based on stuff I've seen in the past. Anyway, tell us what you think. So we're going to start with what documents you need when you buy a Sub2. And again, as I said in the beginning, these are the documents that we use. And if you talk to any teacher out there, they're probably going to have different ones. Doesn't mean any ones are right or wrong. Some people claim to have the greatest documents in the world that'll protect you from everything. And let me tell you something, as someone with experience in this, I'm going to tell you, just when you think you're protected from everything, somebody proves to you that that's just not true. You don't have any control over what people do. And no matter what kind of documents you have or what disclosures you have, there's always going to be somebody out there to test that. You do the best you can to protect yourself. The biggest protection is to make sure that you, your seller, your buyer, everybody that's involved, all understand what's going on and that you're 100% honest with them. You don't make false promises to them. And that's the best way to protect yourself. Now, is it absolute? Nope. You'll still have people that'll test you, but that is the very best that you can do. So let's get started. Now, we call what we do, we call the docs two-stage documents. There's the first stage, and that's getting the deal under contract. When I get a call from a seller or we contact a seller and they're ready to go, we're going to have an initial package of documents that we're going to get at the initial meeting. These are the normal documents. Occasionally, there will be a difference in this. For example, this first package has just a few documents. From time to time, we will add our power of attorney to the initial package, depending on the seller's circumstances and what's going on. We may have to duplicate these documents if there's more than one owner or people are getting a divorce. So just bear in mind, this situation would be a single seller. They're not behind on payments. There's not a problem with what's going on. It's just a seller that really wants to sell their house. Okay. So at the initial meeting, I'm going to get, number one is going to be a sales contract. You always start with a sales contract. I can tell you stories about people that supposedly have deals but don't have a contract. And that's just not true. If you don't have it reduced to writing, you really don't have anything. Now, is a question a lot of people will have is there a special contract for Sub2? And the truth of the matter is there's not. You can write a sales agreement on the back of a napkin if you want to. And it will be valid as long as it's signed by both parties. Both people understand what's going on and they've agreed to it. So they've signed it. What we do is we put special clauses in our contract that make it a Sub2 contract. And that's, for example, addressing the Sub2 situation specifically. We have actual clauses in our contract that state we're taking over this property subject to the existing financing. We're taking over a loan with ABC Bank, loan number 1234567, with the principal balance of X, with payments of X, and that we will start making those payments effective on a certain date. So we address that specifically in our contract. Now, can you do this with a regular contract, with a board of realtors contract, if you use those, if a realtor's involved, with any contract that you get anywhere, with a home Office Depot contract that you get? Sure, you can. What you have to do is write the Sub2 specific language in the addendum section, or just add it under special stipulation. So that's really all you have to do. Now, is it easier, in my opinion, to get this stuff done with a contract that's got that stuff built in? Sure it is. Because if it's already in the document, it is just normal and nobody looks at it in a strange way. It's already built in there. It must be okay. That's just most people's assumption. It's easier to explain what you're doing. So for that reason, I prefer a sales contract that's got that stuff built in. So you want to start with a sales agreement. If you guys have any questions along the way, just drop them in. Secondly, we're looking for borrower authorization, also known as an authorization to release information. And these forms years ago used to be pretty simple. You could use one generic one. You could send it to every lender out there and they would honor that. Now, the borrower authorization to release is going to have some information on that. It's going to have the borrower's names. It's going to have their social security number, their date of birth, their signature, the name of the lender, the loan number, the address and contact information of the lender. And it's going to have a place to give a certain person authorization to contact the lender about that loan and gather information. What we found over the years, though, is that a lot of lenders have changed. They have a specific form. It has all the same information. The biggest difference in them is it usually has their logo or their letterhead on it. So what we've done over the years is just start, if we call up a new lender and they go, oh, this one won't do, we have a specific one, we have them send that one to us, and then we just save that in our collection. Next time we get a loan with that lender, we know to use that one and it's okay. But that's the form that you're going to use to send over to the bank to say, hey, I need to get some information on this loan. I'm helping Bob with his financial situation, and we need to get some information. A lot of times you can bypass the 2 or 3 days that this takes by, once you're meeting with Bob, you can have him get on the phone with his lender right there, give you verbal authorization, and you can ask the questions that you need to know. You know, loan balance, payment amount, is there an escrow? When was the loan originated? What's the interest rate? Whatever questions you want to ask. Then you also have that borrower authorization to send over to the bank after the fact so they can have it on file. But you can get your questions answered right there at the kitchen table many times. So that's how that particular form works. Okay, Matt. I thought you had a question. Here we go. Okay, the next form that you want to get, and like I said, sometimes we get these, sometimes we don't at the initial one, is a power of attorney. If I'm dealing with a seller that has to leave right away, maybe the situation is a little bit flighty, they're just in town for a couple of days, whatever the case may be, if I'm concerned that I may not be able to get in touch with them again, I just want something a little bit stronger. So I'll go ahead and get a power of attorney in those cases. Next is the seller property disclosure statement. Anytime someone sells a house that they've lived in, and this would be appropriate here, because most of the people that you're going to deal with are living in the property or have lived in it recently. A seller property disclosure statement where they tell you what's working, what's not working, any known problems with the house. Now, will they be 100% honest? In most cases, they will be. Does it mean that you shouldn't do an inspection on the property or take a look at things yourself? Absolutely not. You do need to do that. But it can be a help in some situations. And just going through the form with the seller you may learn some things that you didn't know. I mean, I've learned about, properties that I was in that maybe had a built-in vacuum cleaner system or something, amenities that I didn't know about. As we go through the form, they say, oh yeah, we have that. We have a sprinkler system. We have that. You learn a lot more about the house. So you definitely want to get the seller disclosure form. That's the same form any realtor would get when they listed a house. And we like to get that one as well. The ultimate disclosure form, this is a form that we put together years and years ago. It's about 40 different points, and it addresses a lot of situations. I've seen variations of this thing all over the place, but really what's important about it, it's your first disclosure form beyond the sales contract that states you're taking subject to and will make the payments indefinitely. This disclosure form covers about 40 different points. It addresses the seller has to attest to the fact that they're not intoxicated, they're not on drugs, no mind-altering substances. They're in full control of their faculties. They understand what they're doing. They've had a chance to consult an attorney if you told them they should do that, and you should, and that they know exactly what they're doing and they're okay with it. They understand that we're taking over payments on a debt that will still probably remain on their credit report until it's retired. And it covers just a lot of other stuff like that. Some of it's kind of crazy, but they initial off on each one of those items and sign that form. So those are the documents that we're going to get at the first meeting. And remember, disclosures are super important in here because people like to come back later and say that they didn't understand something completely. But we make sure, even in our first meeting, our sales agreement addresses that we're taking this property subject to and that we will only make payments on it. We will not pay it off in full. Our ultimate disclosure addresses that fact as well. So we're doing that at the first meeting. They understand exactly what they're getting into. They understand exactly what the process is going to be. So if you guys have any questions about the first section of forms. Good morning, Elena. Good to see you. Good to see you, Jeff. Hadn't seen you in a while. There's Allie here. Good to see you guys. I must be explaining these pretty well if nobody has any questions. So if y'all don't have any questions, most of y'all are probably pretty familiar with these documents. So once we get the first set of documents, then we're going into the due diligence process. I had someone ask me recently, when you go out foreclosure door knocking, do you research all of these properties before you go knock on the door? And I told them, I'm not doing any work on a property that I'm not even sure that seller's going to talk to me. It's just a big waste of time. Now, I may have had 2 or 3 conversations with the seller that I just met with and got these forms from. Before we're actually out there filling out some forms. We bought a house a few weeks ago, actually, that I had a couple of conversations with this fellow. We had a couple of months of texting with him before he finally called me and said, hey, I'm ready to do this. We went out and met with him and sat at the kitchen table with him and his wife, Jodi and I did. And we explained to him how we would have to buy the house, what the process would be. And he said, the smart thing, actually, he said, well, let me and my wife talk for a few minutes. And would you guys mind going outside? So we did. And about 10 minutes later, he came out and he says, you know what? He says, we're going to sleep on it. And we'll call you tomorrow. And I said, okay, that sounds good. Just give us a call. So Jodi and I went out to dinner, and before the food was even brought, this was less than 30 minutes later, the guy called and he said, listen, if you'll give us 12,000 instead of 10, we'll do it. So we had dinner and then we drove back to his house and we got it written up. But I wouldn't have done any research on that house before we had it under contract because it wasn't our deal. In my opinion, that's just a waste of time. Now, typically, if someone is not in foreclosure, if they're not days from the auction, we're going to give ourselves about 2 weeks for any due diligence that we have to do. And that's typically for us going to be verifying information with the lender. It's going to be a title search. It's going to be any kind of inspections that we want to have on the property. Now, I'm not a person to get a lot of professional inspections done. I've been doing this for a long time, and I typically know what I'm looking for. If somebody's living in the house, things appear to be working, I'll do a walkthrough and I can get a pretty good idea about what the house needs. So for us, it's really a title search, just a walkthrough of the property, a look at everything, and then verification of stuff with the lender. So that's just about it. But we'll give ourselves 2 weeks in the paperwork to get that done. We want to start marketing the house for our buyers. And then we'll proceed on with the closing. So I'm going to check and see if we've got any questions. We'll go on to the phase 2 documents. Let's see. Juan has a question. Have you ever had any sellers agree to everything except the power of attorney? No, I've never had a seller refuse me a power of attorney. Why? Because of the way I explain it. And it is a limited and specific power of attorney. It is only for that property. And I just explained to them that I need this in case something has to be handled with insurance, taxes have to be paid, any work has to be done to the property if there's any damage. And I've never had anyone refuse to do that. And honestly, thinking about it right now, I guess if they did refuse, then that would just be a deal that I couldn't do. Could it be done anyway? Probably. I mean, you can do a sub-2 just getting a deed. You own the house. I mean, that could make things problematic if you had situations pop up, and everything doesn't always go according to plan. But no, I've never had anyone refuse, and I think it's just in the presentation. If I present everything as just this normal course of business, this is what we do, then they just tend to sign them. And that's what we're trained to do as people these days anyways, just comply. Hello from Mississippi. I'm betting that's Cindy. I can't tell because it just says Facebook user, but good morning, regardless, whoever you are there. Alana, what about if you plan on having them do a loan modification? Have you run into that situation? Do they do the paperwork after? I'll tell you, Alana, things have changed over the years, and I would not meet with a seller today and advise them to do a loan mod and then sell to me. I just wouldn't do it. And there's a couple of reasons. I think that things are a little bit more, let me see how to put it, dangerous than they used to be. Most loan modification documents that we've seen the last couple of years, the sellers have to attest that they will continue living in the house after this loan modification. So for that reason, I'm not going to have them sign a statement falsely, or, I don't ever want to be accused of any type of loan fraud, that I got a lender to make a decision based on a lie. I don't want to be party to that. So if they've already gotten a loan mod and they've gotten into trouble again, that's a completely different story. That wasn't my fault. I didn't advise them on what to do. And I wasn't involved in that transaction. And the truth is 70% of people in foreclosure today are probably going to be back into trouble in the next 12 months. And we've seen tons of people that have had loan modifications that never made a payment after. So to answer your question, I would not advise someone to do a loan mod with the intention of selling to me after. Can they change their mind? That's another risk to having people do a loan mod. Once all the payments are caught up and they're in good shape, who's to say they're going to sell to you anyway? My advice would be, if you meet with someone and they qualify for a loan mod, advise them to do that as a way to keep their house. If they ever get in trouble again, give you a call. But I wouldn't buy it at that point. So I hope that answers your question. Let's see. Juan said, I know you don't want to do too much research before getting a house under contract, but what kind of criteria do you look at to narrow down your focus before door knocking? It's really pretty simple for me, Juan. Is the house in an area where I want to own property? If it's in an area, if it's in a war zone, I'm not interested. If it's a mobile home, sorry, Pam, I'm not interested. Is it in horrible shape? Do I already know that? Can I see that from the Zillow pictures or anything like that? No, I'm not interested. But generally, we won't know that until we get there. Primarily, it's going to be the type of house that it is and the location that it's in. If it's in a good location, I'm going to drive out and take a look. So that's how I decide. Can Kind of surprising you haven't had any refusals. Listen, I'm a persuasive guy, Jeff. I come in there with that Southern accent and everything, and I just win them over. But we just presented. I listen when I'm going through the loans. I think Jodi actually taped the last closing that we did with the intent of using it in the coaching. I mean, she taped it with their consent, and so you guys can see just how I present this stuff. We haven't actually gotten that in the group yet, but we need to talk to her about getting that done. I'm telling you, think about the first couple of times that you ever bought a house or sold a house. Well, bought a house for sure. You went into a closing. The attorney had a stack of documents about 2 inches thick, and he just put those in front of you, gave you a brief description, and you just signed them and went on. And most of the people, by the time we get to the closing table, they've talked with us a few times. They've probably seen our video testimonials. They've done whatever research they're going to do on us. And they just sign the documents. Now, could you use that in a bad way? Probably, but I'm telling you guys exactly what we use here today. There's nothing bad about any of it. It's just what the stuff you need to get the job done. Okay. Let's see what else. Is there additional documents if it's an agent off-market pocket listing? I've never gotten an agent to give me an off-market pocket listing. Tyree, I've had bad luck working with agents for the most part. So if there's an agent, if it's off market, if it's not on market, then there probably isn't going to be anything additional. If it's on market, now obviously the agent's going to want to use their contracts and some other stuff. But I'll tell you, if you have better luck doing that than I do, tell me about it, because agents just don't seem to want to work with us. Want no part of mortgage fraud. Me either, man. I got enough issues going on out here. I don't need to create any more for me. Good morning from the Honda dealership. Well, that's Jodi. Jodi's out there getting the car service this morning. So we miss her in here. I need my producer. Let's see. Kevin, 100% right about loan modifications. You get in serious trouble. Stay away. Hey, it's good to see you, Kevin. Hadn't seen you in a while. Glad to see you on here. Let's see. What about if they try to talk to you through the Ring doorbell when door knocking? I've had people do that to me. I've had them talk to me through the door, through the little video thing. And ultimately, we haven't wound up working with any of those people yet. But, if they want to have a conversation, if they're talking, they're interested. The ones that I've had talk to me through the Ring doorbell were typically, we've got it taken care of. We don't need any help. And to that, I just say, well, listen, I'm going to leave my card. I'm going to leave this package. It's got some information for you. If you need, if you change your mind, if you need a resource, we'll be glad to help you. And typically those people aren't going to work with you. But yeah, that happens from time to time. Where's the sidekick? I don't see her out on the deck. Looks like snow. No, she just made a comment here. She's getting the car serviced. We're going to be taking a trip pretty soon, and it was time for that. So that's where she's at. I live in a small town. There's a limited 3-2 brick home, so I'm thinking I may need to work the next big town over. That's true. You can work the next big town. You can work across the country if you want to. Did that for a long time too. Whatever is common where you are. Okay. If 2 bedrooms are common where you are, listen, I've bought more 2-bedroom houses since I've been here than I've probably ever bought in 25 years, because that is common, especially up here in Bella Vista, a lot of 2 bedrooms. So we bought a few of those, and they worked out real well, but that's just what's common here. So Tyree said the agent wasn't sure how to add his contract. Well, a lot of agents, and this is all hearsay, Tyree, because like I said, I've never gotten one to work with me. A lot of agents, especially on listed property, they will not do anything with a different contract. They want to use their contract. We got some agents on here today. I know Kevin's an agent, I believe now, and I'm not sure who else. But you guys tell me if that's the case. If the house is listed, even if they're doing something creative, they want to use that realtor contract, and that's okay. Like I said earlier, just add an addendum that addresses the fact that you're buying this house subject to, and then you just use the rest of your documents. You should be just fine. Matt says, are you guys going to be doing the 50% off again for Black Friday? Kevin, we are going to have a Black Friday sale. And that's all I'm going to say about it. You'll get an email about it tomorrow. And it will be good for one day and one day only. Actually, Black Friday. It's not going to be week long. It's going to be a heck of a deal. Check it out. You'll like it. If I'm a licensed agent, should I offer them the choice, list it for them, or buy for cash or Sub2 and let them choose? I'll tell you, Alana, inside the Max group, we've got a guy, and I'm not going to mention his name because I don't know how much he wants out there about what he does. But he is actually a broker and does a lot of deals. You know, you get calls from your marketing, and he goes out to list. And if he discovers a situation where they're going to have to bring cash to close, or another situation where it's urgent that they sell quickly, they don't have time to wait, he will switch hats and go into, listen, let me tell you how we can help you here. So now, will that be okay for you as an agent? I guess that's probably going to depend on your broker. You know, we had a conversation. There's somebody in here now. I think she's still in here. We had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about how uninformed her broker is, and that they're not open to a lot of creative stuff. So that's going to depend on your broker, unless you're a broker yourself, and then you don't have to worry about it. So you might want to check that out with them. Let's see what we got next. What all do you take when you go knock on doors? Door drop package, full set of docs, just a contract? When we go door knocking, we take just the package. Now, our package has a contract in it, and it's also got a letter that explains what we do and how we can help. But I've always got a box full of documents for any type of deal. Wholesale deal, cash deal, Sub2, it doesn't matter. And every investor in here should be carrying that. I used to call it a buyer's briefcase. Okay. And it is just the documents you need to do any kind of deal that may come along, because you don't know. You might be on your way to the movies, and a seller that you've been talking to for 6 months calls you and says, you know what, I got to do something right now. Let's get this thing done. So, you know, you want to be ready to go. You don't want to have to drive back home or whatever. You want to head to see that seller right now. So you should be carrying that stuff with you all the time. When we go door knocking, we carry the packages that we put together for our door knock people, but we've always got all the documents we need to sign up a deal inside the car. Kevin says their contract, but you can include Sub2 language. Exactly. Okay. And Kevin also says, with the lawsuit against NAR, agents will be willing to listen to creative deals, give it time, in compliance. That's right. I'll tell you, I tell the story. Jodi and I, we had a plan. We put together a website, did a bunch of stuff. Our initial outreach to agents, we called 15 agents. And this is one time that you will do a little bit of research on the house. We were looking for listings. I think at the time they'd been on the market for over 60 days. Maybe that wasn't quite long enough, but we were just getting started with it. So we pulled up 15 promising looking properties that had been on the market. Most of them appeared to be vacant, because that was something we looked for too. And we called 15 agents. 2 of them answered the phone and spoke with us. 2 of them returned our calls, and 11 of them we still haven't heard from. And the message was, I thought, pretty would be pretty compelling to have them respond. The message said, hey, my name's William. I'm looking at your property on 123 Oak Street. I'm very interested. I'd love to make an offer. Please call me at. And these people never even call. So obviously they're not too motivated. There's a reason that house hadn't sold. I don't know. Would you consider or trust outsourcing the door knocking to an assistant? I'll tell you, Alana, that is actually something that we're talking about right now. I made a post in the Max group the other day asking who has local assistants, because we're hiring one after the first of the year to do a lot of admin type stuff for us. And one of the things that we may have them do is door knocking. I'm not sure if that will really work out, though, because they would have to be a pretty special individual to not only have the courage to go knock on the door, and a lot of people just can't do that, but secondly, they would have to have a lot of knowledge to be able to answer questions and handle that if the seller answered. Now, that doesn't happen most of the time. I'm guessing we get an answer about 2 out of 10 that we knock on, but they would need to be able to handle that. So I'm not sure that's something that can really be outsourced. I don't know. We'll see what happens. We may hire the right person. Okay, guys, we're going to get to phase 2. We got to get moving here. Okay, so we've signed up our sellers. They've agreed to the terms. We've done our due diligence. Nothing's been uncovered that would make us go, we don't really want this deal. So we're ready to close. Now, for closing, for us, 99% of the time, that means closing with a notary. And we'll typically do this in a bank conference room or somewhere along those lines, because we don't have an outside office right now. Now, should you do self-closings? If you're asking yourself if you should do them, I'm going to tell you probably the answer is no. Is there a big deal to doing it? I don't think so, but I've done hundreds of them. Is it illegal to do them? No, it's not. You've got a notary there. They're handling notarization of the signatures. Does it protect you to use an attorney? Some people would say it does. I say it really doesn't matter. You've given people the opportunity to consult counsel if they wanted to. They've either refused it or gone against it. I have had people say, well, my lawyer told me not to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So it really doesn't matter. Can you do it? Yes, you can. Can you draft legal documents where you're a principal? Yes, you can. You're not practicing law without a license. And I'm sure there are a lot of attorneys out there listening right now that would disagree with that, and that's okay. But we do it. We don't have a problem with it. We sell houses, we refinance houses, and it hasn't been an issue. So what are the documents that we will get at the actual closing? Number one is a warranty deed. Now, that may be different in your state. It may be a grant deed. If you're in California, it may be something different. But for most states, it's going to be a warranty deed. Some people say, we get a quitclaim deed. Can you do that? Sure, you can. But if I'm getting a deed, I want the strongest deed possible. If I'm giving one, I want to give the weakest one possible as a rule. So I like to get warranty deeds, give quitclaim deeds whenever possible. And that's really all there is to it. If you want to do a quitclaim deed, you can certainly do that. We don't do it. And I'm sharing with you guys what we do today. The next one is a due on sale disclosure. Again, this goes into detail about the due on sale clause. We've already covered this. In our sales agreement, it mentions that we're taking over payments on a loan that has a due on sale clause, and there are risks involved in that. This goes into great detail about what those risks are and what can happen, and the possibility that if there is a due on sale problem, that we may need the seller's assistance in the future to handle that, and that they agree that they will help us with that. Now, what would that assistance be? Well, it depends. Possibly it could be that we have to deed the property back to them and buy it another way. We've never had to do that before, but it is a possibility, and so we want to cover all of those options if we have to. But it's a lengthy explanation of exactly what the due on sale clause is, how it works, and what would happen if there were an issue and how we would handle it. Next, a seller recourse disclosure. And I'm telling you, unless someone has added this document to their package in the last couple of years, no one else offers anything like this that I've heard of. And I'll tell you the reason that we started doing it. I can't remember the year, 2005, 2006. I believe it was North Carolina. The Attorney General started a whole bunch of stuff about Subject 2. And they actually talked about for a long time, it was a big worry among the investing community that this would be the issue that ended Subject 2, because this Attorney General was very loud about it. There was a lot of talk about it in North Carolina specifically. And their main problem, it turned out, was that in a Sub-2 situation, sellers typically have no recourse. They've deeded their property away. They're still liable for the loan. If you decide that you don't want to pay or do whatever it is bad that you want to do, then they have no recourse against you. So I said, well, I just said, well, why don't we create a document that gives them a formal way and lays out just a pathway for, if we don't act right, they can get their house back if that's what they want to do. So that's what we did. It's really just a document that explains the process. This is what we would do. This is how we would get your property back if we couldn't or wouldn't pay for it. And is it binding? Could we still not deed them their house back? Yeah, if we wanted to be that way, we could. Would they still have to ultimately go through some kind of lawsuit with us to do that? Yep, they probably would. But that's not our intention. That's not what we plan to do. And this document just lays out in detail, listen, if we don't do this, then you do this, and we'll take care of that. So that's just something we include. I think they appreciate the fact that we think about things, the worst case scenarios that could happen ahead of time, and try to address those. Let's see if we've got any other questions. Matt said, you should build a course on the steps of how to close someone when door knocking. Gosh, Matt, there's so many situations and so many different types of people. You'd have to talk about it just in general. I don't think we've ever closed anyone at the door. That's usually a process. Most people in foreclosure are in denial. They think they're going to save their house. The majority of them say, we want to keep our house, or we've got it taken care of. It's a realization that they have to come to. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time. Unfortunately, most of them that come to that realization do it about 30 minutes before the auction. That's usually what happens. So closing them at the door, gosh, I've never been good enough to do that. So I don't know. What's the difference between a seller recourse disclosure and buying it on a wrap mortgage? I don't buy on wraps, Nick. I don't do that, and there's several reasons I don't. I don't really have time to get into all of that today, but I'll just say that a lot of the people that we deal with have problems, and they would be hard to get to, possibly be hard to get to in the future. When I deal with my seller, I want them out of the picture. I don't want to have to depend on them for a signature later or anything else when I'm ready to sell my house. And I've seen too many cases where they're hard to get in touch with. They don't want to cooperate with you later, or whatever the case may be. So that's the seller recourse disclosure is not a document that that gets recorded. It's between us and the seller. In the past, we've used a mirrored deed of trust. Yep. I get that. Some people do that. Some people buy on a wrap or do a performance mortgage, so to speak. But we just don't do that. I don't want, like I said, I don't want to have to depend on finding my seller and them cooperating, because, 4 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever, I just don't want to do that. I'd love to see William wear a video camera when he door knocks. We've talked about doing that. I don't know what kind of disclosures would have to be put in place for that, but Jodi and I have actually talked about doing that. So maybe one day in the future, we'll see. Okay, so escrow acknowledgement for 99% of the houses that you buy, well, certainly that we do, they have an escrow account, and at times that escrow account will have a balance when you buy the house. Now, in a typical sale, if you go to a closing company, somebody brings cash, that escrow balance will go back to the seller. They'll get that in the form of a check from the lender in a few weeks after the closing. So we have an escrow acknowledgement that lets them know that any escrow balances, any insurance refunds, when we change insurance, any of that, those funds will come back to us. We're purchasing the house. We're also purchasing the escrow account. So we let them know that. Bill of sale, any personal property that's left, outbuildings, appliances, anything like that. When you do a regular purchase for cash, there's a bill of sale involved, and we do the same thing. Remember, we're buying a house just like anyone else is. We're just using a different form of financing, and we want our closing to be just like any other closing. We also get a seller's affidavit stating that they haven't had any work done on the house in the last 90 days. It hasn't been paid for. We don't want to have to worry about any mechanics liens after the fact or anything like that. Most of the time, that's not an issue. But again, that's just a standard part of most closings. So that's what we do. And then finally, a HUD. All of our sellers get a HUD. Now, some people think that's complicated to do. I've put out a couple of videos on how to create your own HUD if you're doing your own closings. But it's really pretty simple to fill in the documents, and you can find one of those videos and it'll show you how to do it. But all of our any seller that sells a house today in any closing title company around the country is going to get a HUD or an ALTA, and our seller gets one as well. So that's what we do, guys. These are the documents that we use in our closings. Now, like I said in the beginning, occasionally there may be something different. From time to time, we have a seller that will agree to take equity in the future, and we give them a promissory note for that. We don't typically give them a second mortgage. That's not something that's recorded against the property. We do give them a promissory note for that equity. That's what we offer them, and then that's what we give them. So that's that. If you guys have any questions about those or any other creative finance questions, I'll be glad to answer those for you. Let's see. It gave them the ability to get their house back if I failed for some reason. Yep, that's true. You can certainly do that if that's what you prefer. We don't do things that way. Let's see. Awesome information. Running a little behind, trying to catch up. Hey, man, good to see you on here today. We've missed you on the last few calls. So if you guys have any questions, I'll be glad to take those. Before we wrap up here, I would like to share with you, first of all, you can get every form that we use along with explanations, video, in our Contract to Close course. And you can get that at Sub2 University if you guys want to check that out. Guys, we've got about 40 days until next year, 40 days until 2024. And I'm sure there are a bunch of you out there, and if you're not on here now, maybe you're watching this later, that said 2023 was going to be your year. You were going to become an investor. You were going to change your life. You've got about 40 days until this year's gone. So what was the problem? What was the hang up? What kept you from getting out there and making the difference? I'll tell you, when I got started investing, most of you have heard my story. I was in restaurant management. I'd done that for 20 years. I worked 70 hours a week. I never, I left before daylight. I was home after dark. And I was just so sick and tired of what I did. But I bought a Carlton Sheets course. And I'm telling you, Carlton Sheets is a great course for people to get started with. It is 10 miles wide and 1 inch deep. It covers a lot of area, but not very detailed on any of it. But I took that book and bought my first 3 or 4 houses. If you want to do this, is certainly something that you can do. It's not something that's going to be totally automated. I don't care how many people tell you that you can text 10 million people a day and you can buy just a ton of houses and do all that stuff. You're going to have conversations, real conversations with people. And that's where you're going to do your best deals, when you're sitting across the kitchen table from them and having an actual conversation. You don't have to buy a ton of houses. We don't buy but 10 or 15 houses a year, and that's all I've done for the last 10 or 15 years. But you can have an amazing life if you do that. So I would just like to say to all of you guys, if you want to be successful, you can be. Learn how to do this business. It doesn't matter what you do. If it's sub-twos, if it's lease options, there's a million ways to do it, and I've done a bunch of them. I just do now what I really enjoy, and that's just talking to people, getting the deed to a property, selling it with seller finance, and that's what we like to do. Let's see. We've got a couple of questions. Any tips for calling radio stations? Next step today is to rewatch the videos with Randy, take notes, start making calls to some stations, get an idea of starting costs. Tips on radio. Gosh, John, understand that when you call them, they're going to give you a rate that's out of this world, the rack rate. That's what they're going to tell everybody. So just say, oh, do your takeaway there. Oh, well, man, That's way out of our budget. Can we do better than that? And I'll tell you, a lot of these people, you're going to have a few conversations with them before they'll get in the real world. Eventually, we'll get them down close enough to where we can tell them what our rate is. And that's going to be a multiplier for the CUME rating for the station. And if you listen to Randy and I listen to our call, it'll explain all of that. We tell you exactly. I mean, all I did was copy everything that Randy said to do. And it's worked very well for us. We've got some other students now. We've probably got half a dozen max students that are running radio now and just killing it. I mean, just buying multiple houses every month with radio. You think about it. There was a time when somebody told me, man, $3,000 a month for radio. I'd have said, whoo, that's expensive. But if you're buying a couple of houses a month from it and your average profit on those is $50,000, $3,000 a month ain't nothing. So watch those videos. It'll explain step by step exactly what we did. There's nothing left out. The script that Randy uses, that almost all of our students are using today, the criteria for pricing, and which radio stations to talk to. It's all in there. Is there any significant difference between the HUD and the closing disclosure form that a lot of title companies use these days? No, they started changing those things a while back. Some use an Alta now, some use a HUD. Closing disclosure. And back when we got started, everybody saw everybody's business. We saw the buyer and the seller side. We just do a HUD now that shows the buyers and the seller side, and our sellers don't care. Really, what we want to give them is just a numerical explanation of what took place here, what we took over, any cash we gave to them, any things we paid for them. So there's just really some documentation there that shows what we did. I'm assuming the bill of sale is the master. No, a bill of sale is a bill of sale. It just says that, for consideration, they're leaving whatever it is, stove, refrigerator. It's just a standard bill of sale. Where is the radio video with Randy's and on the podcast or only in the vault? Elena, it is actually, you can find, Randy did a goat talk with me. I thought he did a podcast as well. He may not have, but if you just search our YouTube channel at sub2tv.com, you'll find, just search radio Randy on our channel. You'll find it. It's right in there. Do you even do any skip tracing and marketing, or is it all inbound marketing radio? Right now, Matt, the only things that we're doing are radio and foreclosure marketing. Now, we are going to add some things next year. We're going to really get serious about the agent outreach. And we've got a whole marketing plan set up for that with websites and other stuff. But we're going to add a couple of things next year. Just to really cherry pick the deals. I mean, we already do that anyway, but we just want more inbound stuff that we can pick and choose from. I think, we were buying plenty with radio and foreclosures, but we may step it up a little bit. We're going to do some different stuff. How common is it when you purchase a title and it turns out not being a Sub2 deal? What alternative solutions do you recommend to the purchase a title? I'm not sure what you mean. You're going to have to give me a little more information on that. Okay. All right, guys, we're going to hang out for another minute, see if Tyree can give me a little bit more information on what he's talking about. If y'all have any other questions, we'll answer those for you. Otherwise, we're going to get out of here. It's great to see y'all here. Like I said, I know there are 10,000 lives and webinars and everything. Everybody does a webinar these days. So title check. If you do a title check, okay, so I see what you're saying. So if we get something under contract and the title work comes back and maybe there's a second mortgage, it doesn't make sense or something like that. What do we do at that point? Well, we just go back to the seller and say, hey, remember this second mortgage you forgot about? We're either going to have to collect this money from you to make this deal happen, or you're going to need to list it or something else. It just shouldn't make sense for us. Now, occasionally you'll have something happen. I'll give you an example. We bought a foreclosure, 6 months ago. Between the time we got it under contract and did the due diligence and a couple of days before we close, this girl got a Discover card lien against her. Of course, the house was still in her name, but it was almost $9,000. And yeah, I shed a tear or two, but we went ahead and closed because we're going to make six figures on that house. And besides the fact, I know one of a couple of things is going to happen with that lien. I'm probably not going to pay it off in full. Either it's going to go on, our buyers are going to be in there a long enough period of time for it to just expire, or they're going to be in there for a few years, and I'm going to call up Discover and say, hey, we'll give you X for this paper, and they're going to take it probably. So I'm not going to pay $9,000. I'll probably either pay $1,000 or nothing on this thing. So it happens sometimes. And you just have to make a decision on whether it's a good enough deal to move forward with it. We found houses with second mortgage. Sellers amazingly forget sometimes about second mortgages or other liens that they might not have even known about. We looked at a house a couple of months ago for us that was listed, and they were open to a creative offer. But we found out that this house had like an $80,000 lien on it from where this fella had been convicted of some kind of federal crime and had to make restitution or something, and they'd attached a lien to this property. They didn't even know about that until we told them about it. Ultimately, we wound up not doing that. That was an interesting story, but anyway. All right, so it just depends. It just depends on if it's a good enough deal to move forward or you want to let it go. Okay, guys. Well, that is going to be it for us. Listen, remember, subscribe to our channel if you're not already a subscriber. We would love to have you do that. And you can do that at Sub2 TV. I don't have my producer here today. I have to do this stuff myself. Sub2TV.com. Subscribe to our channel. We'd really appreciate it. And we will see you guys, not next Tuesday because we're off next Tuesday, but we'll be back. We're scheduled to have a really good show the first Tuesday of December, and I'm going to tell you guys more about that later. But man, you won't want to miss that. If you do seller financing and you want to create marketable notes that you can sell if you need cash, you don't want to miss that. So be back here with us first Tuesday in December. So we'll see you then. You guys get out there, talk to some sellers, and buy some houses.